All right, so we have time for a few questions. Where's the mic? There's a mic? Okay, wow, front and center.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So if you have a question about the client-therapist relationship, do you have a question that you feel like is important to ask?
Chelsea, thank you for coming back. I saw you last year, and I read your book and listened to your podcast. It's awesome. I'm Stacy Ambrosich. I'm a former high school math teacher, and now I'm into travel directing. What I want to ask you, because I've been in therapy for since '97, and I've had family members say, well, you've been through so much therapy, why aren't you better? But I feel like there's a lot of people that resonate that who are through therapy. So for you, when, people who are close to you, how do they, what happened when you started changing? What happened to the people that were close to you?
Yeah, there was a shift, definitely for a lot of people. A lot of people embraced it, and I embraced a lot of people I hadn't embraced before. And I mean, most people, it was a welcome change because it was visible, I think, to a lot of people. And I was more patient. I was not short-tempered. I was more present, and I was just more gentle. And so it was welcome, but there's definitely, there's people who are like, oh, you're on that train now? And it's like, yeah, I am, because that train isn't miserable. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to talk badly about the people in my life that I love. I mean, a little bit, but not a lot, I don't want to run around doing that. I want to grow up. And there are people that get stuck in that, and that has friction in friendships, But one of the things I learned from therapy is that, then I started to read lots of spirituality and different authors, and Eckhart Tolle and whomever else, and, whatever resonates with you. But I realized, I gained a better understanding that everything is different, and it changes, and it is ephemeral, and it's impermanent. And so to stop fixating on the things that you can't change, and to just be the best thing that you can be, and everything will flow the way it's supposed to. And friendships that are meant to last will. And it allowed me not to fight that anymore, not resist change that I don't like, to accept it and move on, and just to understand that everything usually ends up okay. And before, when people said that to me, I wanted to smack them across the face. I'd be like, everything is not okay. But, it kind of is. Everything is okay, It will be okay. You will be okay. As long as you're breathing, you can survive.
Well, thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. First, I just want to say, Chelsea, thank you for speaking about your journey. There's so much stigma against going for therapy, and a lot of people think you have to have a diagnosed mental illness to go to therapy, and even those people may resist it. So just want to really thank you, because it's very important. And the question I have is, what would you say to people who are very resistant to go to therapy? They say, oh, I don't believe in it. Sometimes we suspect it's because they're afraid of that pain that you just talked about. What would you say now that you've gone through it?
Well, I would just say that, you can't, as long as you're not open to something, there's a problem. If you're not willing to do something that's usually beneficial for people, then obviously you have an issue. And I don't think you can force anyone to go to therapy. You can only show by example, and show people how much happier you are, and how much more available you are for them, and that goes for strangers and family and friends. It goes for anybody in this world. You just have to put a nice bright light out there and focus on that. So I don't know how you get someone to go to therapy. I have people I'd like to go to therapy too, but I just keep doing my thing and understand that they're not ready, or they're not in a place yet, and they'll get there when they get there. Nobody. Well, actually, people did say to me, you're very angry. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, well, I have a problem then. It's very helpful when you can tell people the truth. Yeah. People don't respond well to it right away, but, if they're sensible, they'll hear it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Can I just have a little follow-up question on it? What do you think changed that you could say, wow, okay, I'm angry, I need to now go try to change this?
What changed? I think I realized that I wasn't just angry with my own behavior. I started to understand that people were were annoyed with my behavior, or the optics of it. I didn't like that. And so for the vanity of it was the real reason. I was like, well, wait, something's wrong with me. And then when you get into therapy, it's not about that anymore. It's about much bigger things than other people. But that was what got me there, to know that that was what the vibe I was putting out. I didn't want that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, Dr. Ali Benazir, happiness engineer. Huge fan of Dan's work, and I think everybody should read Aware. And I'm not getting paid to say this. At least not getting paid enough. And my question is for Chelsea. So comedy theorists say that hostility is one of the roots of comedy, or at least good comedy. So if one becomes the bodhisattva of compassion, does all this meditation, becomes a really nice person, does your comedy change? Can you still be happy? I mean, can you still be funny? What's your experience been?
Yeah, because now I can talk about my hostility in a memory form. So it's still just as funny because it's real. It's just not happening anymore.
And can we do a plug for your the
HBO?
No.
I'm trying to promote her. Okay.
Well, I have to say thank you because I lost my sister as well, and it was your first book that made me realize I was not a terrible person, and all the drinking I was doing was totally fine. It was totally okay that I was a whore in college, and I was so free, and it changed my entire perception of the world. But when you experience something like that, you are so angry, and a lot of what you had shared in that book is what made me want to do this work. Along with your ayahuasca retreat and everything, I had a similar experience that would not allow for me to even be open, which then made me go to therapy and I found you as well, Dan, and you guys are doing amazing work. And I think part of what gets portrayed as a stigma, especially for Black women, is that we are angry. And I guess you kind of are a Black woman in a way, but like not really, in a way. And so, this is going weird. A lot of people.
Listen, I also believe I'm a Black woman. Okay?
I know. I do too, but you're not. But it's okay. In a way you are. And so I feel like your experience has really broken down a lot of barriers in the way that mental health for me has been, I've projected myself onto people, and it was coming across angry and forthrighteous in a way. So I guess I'm wondering, at what point did you get to where you felt like you were? Did you ever feel the same again before you lost your brother? Did you ever get to a place where you felt that your funniness was not jaded from feeling like loss or missing somebody? Do you get to feel your life fully? Yes, absolutely. That's just around the corner for everybody. I mean, it doesn't take much to get there. It just takes an understanding and a desire. You know, it's what's the point of wasting all that energy, of wasting all that fuel? There's a purpose for it for a short period of time. We should always be honoring the people that we lost, but we shouldn't be suffering inveterately. They don't want us to be suffering. They wouldn't want that. So it's how do you want to be the most alive you can possibly be? The gentleman who was on the panel earlier, who was talking so eloquently about showing up now and being here, now. That is really the essence of doing that for strangers and for the people that you love, to be that kind of person. And then, you start to, I don't miss my brother anymore. I feel like he's around me more now than ever because I've become aware, because I'm sensitive to that. Before I'd be like, yeah, my brother, no, I don't believe in that. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I decide what I believe in, and I believe in it now. That's great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hi, thanks so much to both of you for coming and sharing your stories. And
this better be a proposal.
Can I promote that?
not quite.
You can sit down now.
So my question.
Here it is. On your knees.
So your story included sort of this breakthrough moment with the orange, and I feel like a lot of sort of the more popularized stories of people talking about their experiences with therapy often have this, sort of breakthrough moment, right? The orange moment of everybody's story. And I feel like sometimes for, I don't know, people going through therapy, that can, it can sort of make it seem like if you don't have that kind of really intense, like, single moment where, like, everything becomes clear and you have this, outpouring of emotion or whatever, this, like, classic breakthrough moment, it can be a little bit frustrating or discouraging and feel like maybe, like, kind of like, what's the point of doing all this therapy? It's, like, a little bit uncomfortable and doesn't really seem like it's leading anywhere, and I don't have any, clear, obvious trauma that, like, needs to be addressed. I just have, maybe some generalized anxiety or whatever. And so I guess my question is sort of, what would you say to that and to, people who are sort of frustrated by a lack of a breakthrough moment?
Well, I would stop comparing yourself to anybody, because that's not your moment. You know what I mean? That's my moment. You're going to have your own moment, or you're going to have a series of moments. And, like, the problem, the idea of sharing all of this is to say, oh God, we all of us have unrealized stuff. We always we can work to be better, but it's important not to compare your experience to others' experience. To have the intention of going to therapy because you want to be a better human being is enough. You don't have to have some aha moment. I did need to have some aha moment because I had some real trauma. So everyone is different, and that's the thing, with sharing. It's like, yeah, it's great when you hear people have a similar story. I remember when I started talking about my brother dying and how many other people's brothers died, I'm like, what? I didn't know this was happening everywhere, You realize you're not alone, and by the same token, you're not the same. But we're together. So I would say just, do your thing and believe in yourself, and things will happen for you, and you'll have awakenings in different ways.
And Dan, do you think sometimes maybe you're just not with a good therapist or the right therapist, or there's like stagnation and something needs to...
Yeah, now's a good time to go off on therapists. Let's do that.
If I can follow that too, but I'm not asking for a proposal, but that'd be okay. So a couple of things. Just to follow on what you said, Soren. Sometimes the match between a therapist who might be perfectly competent and you is just not a great match. And, if after a certain period of time, and I'll say somewhere like between, 6 to 12 months, not much is happening, unless there's some serious what's called resistance going on, it may not be a good match. The approach of that therapist, the personality of that therapist, the attachment strategy of that therapist may not be quite right for you. And so, you should see some kind of something within the first year. You really should. So that's the first thing. The second thing I just want to say is that, for many people, there isn't that, moment that's highlighted and everything comes crashing apart or crashing together, However, there is, in the book Aware was mentioned, there is this practice called the Wheel of Awareness, where what I found is that if people do a practice like that, in this case, it's a very simple practice of the things you're aware of are on the rim and pure awareness is in the hub. And what people experience in therapy, or even people who just read the book and do that, when they learn how to distinguish the hub from the rim, things like anxiety or mild to moderate depression or just feeling bored with themselves start to dissolve away, and that hub, which they get access to, liberates their mind. Now, in that book, I talk for 100 pages, so I'll just say it in like a 1.5 minute sentence. But if you think about the mind as an emergent property of energy, then sometimes our temperament, our attachment experiences, even without loss and trauma like that, or abuse, something like that, they can get locked into what are called top-down filters that keep on repeating themselves, so we get lost in familiar places. If you do a practice like the wheel and access the hub, it drops you into what we call this plane of possibility, and then new stuff starts to emerge, and instead of feeling trapped by your own personality proclivities, you actually can liberate this really fresh way where on the subjective side, the ordinary starts feeling and being extraordinary. And there's a whole science behind that in the Aware book I talk about. And so those are not moments of, oh my God, this was a sudden thing, but rather an empowering of you to literally liberate your mind, to wake up your mind. And sometimes what happens is you realize who you are is not really a noun, but you're a verb, you know? And then life really starts to happen.
I'm wondering, Dan, on that, are there ever people that come to you for therapists and you're just like, oh, this person's an idiot? Or they're talking about something, you're like, really, again? Like you're thinking these things and you're just kind of triggered by them. Maybe they remind you of a bully in elementary school, or maybe you just don't like them. Does that ever happen to you? No, we don't have, and you're like, you know what, I might not be the best therapist for you.
Yeah, that's definitely happened like that. Yeah, there are people where sometimes the issue is they do remind me of a relative that, you know, just they're too much in my face like that. So, and I will say after, because the standard thing is, well, let's try a few sessions, see how it goes. And I'll say, I don't think I'm the one for you. I have done that several times in my career. However, on the other side, just to give you a more general thing, is if there's something I feel I don't like in a person, then I feel like I'm missing something. Right? And then I have to do the inner work of saying, you know, well, maybe they remind me of this or remind me of that. Because every person's got this core that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard. I mean, I don't need to go through the list of things, but there are some events that are really, really painful. I don't want to get into it, but it's just, you know, where you as a therapist are actually not allowed to report on things that have happened, that you just cannot believe this person just told you they did that. You know, and we're not allowed to say anything. And that becomes really hard when there's a person who, you know, is basically evil. And people get mad at me when I say that, but in fact, there are people who their conscience, even if they had a lot of trauma, and that's what you really aim for, their conscience seems to be missing. And that's, I think, the kind of person that I've worked with that's been the most challenging, and to try to really see if I can do the work on the trauma that's happened that made their conscience go away and work at that level. You know, because as you, the therapists in this room know, if you have a client who says that they've murdered someone, for example, or done things like that, you can't tell anyone. If they're going to murder someone, you have to tell someone. But if they have, you're not allowed to. So you never know who's going to walk in the door. So it's things like that I'm talking about.
Heavy.
And you know, for those of us who are therapists, when you've seen lots of patients, I've been doing this for over 35 years, you know, it's like, you know, sometimes you'll have someone, but even with that, in that situation, you know, you really want to try to prevent things like that, of course, happening in the future, and you want to really try to find the pain that is inside of someone, and liberate the pain, like Chelsea, you so powerfully shared with everyone. It's not always something that can be found, and sometimes it's not even something that's there. But many times there is something there that you just have to go beneath it. And some of these acts of violence are, you know, acts where they're trying to push people away so that this person's own vulnerability is not realized. And so as a therapist, you're in this very, I don't know, I mean, it's a hard, delicate, but important position that maybe, just maybe, some way you can align with this person can prevent something like that from happening in the future. And so you do the work, you know.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. How did we get onto that? Yeah, thank you.
Remember 5 minutes ago when you said you weren't going to get into it?
Yeah, I know.
Hi, Chelsea. My name is...
Thank you.
My name is Paul Hickey. I'm not sure if you want me to thank you for what I'm going to thank you for in this audience, but I appreciated your book, One Night Stands.
Thank you.
And that inspired one of the funnest nights I've had. Do you remember the part in the book where you and your friend would go to parties and one of you would start lying and then the other one would have to go with it?
Yeah, yeah.
I went to a corporate party where they were celebrating the opening of their new headquarters, and I pretended to be a venture capitalist preparing to do a hostile takeover of their company. And it turned out to be a really fun night. Anyway, my question is...
See how inspiring you are?
I know.
You partially answered this, but I'm just curious, the specific strategy for overcoming your Trump rage.
Meditation is a great strategy. That's helped me immensely. Not be reactive, to respond instead of react, which Dan explained to me the difference. To actually not let it control my personality. That administration robbed me of like 1 year of my life, and I really wasn't ready to give them another, you know? I just turned off the news. You know, I'm informed. I care a lot about what happens in this next election, and I could be doing more, but I do what I can when I can. And being an activist and doing stuff and showing up when you don't feel like it and knocking on people's doors and canvassing, unfortunately, is what really matters now, and that's what we have to do. So I try and, you know, walk the walk, and that helps my rage. But I also realize, you know, this is a period of time. This is not permanent either. This is a period of time with Trump, and it fucking sucks, and it's embarrassing, you know, and it's terrible. But it's just a period of time. It won't last forever. He's 75 years old. So, and, you know, and now with the coronavirus, who knows what will happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can build on that.
Build away, Dan.
Yes. You know, in the field of attachment research, where I'm trained, we have a beautiful phrase that some of the researchers use called epistemic trust. So epistemic means, how do we know the nature of truth, right? So in philosophy, there's ontology, how does something become what it is? Epistemology is, how do we know what we know? So epistemic trust is what you learn from your family, from your caregivers, your parents, that the way they tell you the nature of reality is this way can be trusted, and it matches with what you experience in reality. I think the culture now, by dismantling science from public policy, is a violation in cultural epistemic trust that is driving us mad with anxiety. And so to name it, we can tame it. And then to, of course, strategically do things to try to acknowledge that there is something called truth. There is something called reality, and science may have its limitations, but it's one systematic way of trying to explore the nature of reality. So to systematically remove science from governmental policy is, you know, a violation of epistemic trust. You know, in psychiatry, when you do something that's not consistent with reality, we call it a delusion, a psychotic belief. So it's helpful to understand that if you're feeling out of sorts, that something psychotic is going on, it is. You know, it is. So at least we can name it, so we can tame it. And taming it doesn't mean you just like acceptance doesn't mean you just say, oh, I'm passive. Acceptance means you see things as they are, so you can take skillful action to make them right. That's what acceptance is.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really appreciate what both of you have done for culture and society, all three of you actually. And I'm thinking of ways to promote mindfulness and compassion to places in society where it's not reaching. And I wouldn't ask this of most people, especially my patients, but since it's you, Chelsea, I would ask, what has mindfulness done for your sex life?
Not much. Now I'm just mindfully not having sex. So, but I look forward to, you know what?
When that revolution happens.
Yes, when that revolution happens, yes.
I thought that was going to be your proposal. Like,
I know.
leave with that next.
I've given up hopes on being proposed to here today now.
So I realized, like, I have done therapy, and I've seen different counselors, and I dismiss them. Not that I think they're bad or anything, but I'm like I didn't connect with them. Like, how did you, I don't know, decide with all the chaos going on? Like, do you meditate and figure out your own internal shit a little bit first before you bring somebody else in and realize I'm fucked up and
No, I couldn't meditate when I met Dan. I mean, he tried to get me to meditate, and I was like, all right, I'll do that later. I didn't care about meditation. I wanted to fix for my lack of patience and my temper. I wanted to fix, and I didn't want to have to do the work. I wanted the answers to do the work. So I wasn't meditating then. Now I meditate every single day when I wake up, like for 20 minutes, and sometimes I do it twice a day, just because I know the difference. I see it. It shows up. It's like you do it for 6 weeks, nothing's happening, you're not feeling anything, you think you're doing it wrong, and then all of a sudden one day it shows up and you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. And not every meditation is great, but it sets my tone for the day, and it helps me to be calm. And if I don't do it, I definitely feel it. And when I'm around, my Russian sister-in-law, I meditate twice a day. When I'm around people that are gonna, talk nonsense and I have to be nice, yes, I take an edible and then I meditate.
Well, so
sometimes I take 2 edibles.
Yeah, it's like when everyone says turn off the voice, be in the present. And when I tried meditating this morning, and I was like, my voice just keeps going.
Yeah, but just sit. If you're just committing the time, if you're committing 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever, and even if if the voice in your head can't quiet, just give yourself that time to sit there and commit to it. And then, if you do that every day, when you don't do it, you feel it. Mm-hmm. And then it slowly will show up. Of course your voice all of us have experienced that. I mean, that's what meditation is, trying to quiet that brain. But just because you're not, killing it right now doesn't mean you shouldn't commit to it.
Yeah.
So these will be the last 2, so we'll have to make them somewhat short, but go ahead.
Okay, thank you both for being so open and entertaining.
Oh, yes, thank you, Dan.
Have you thought about doing a podcast? That's not my question, but
Chelsea has a great podcast.
The 2 of you together.
We did a podcast episode on my old
You mean us hosting a podcast together?
Yeah.
Maybe, you mean like a therapy? But I give my unsolicited advice and he gives his professional advice.
Okay, well, sorry, that wasn't my question. My question was, Dr. Dan, you have taught and helped so many, all of us here, it sounds like Chelsea. What has Chelsea maybe taught or helped you with in all of this?
Great question.
He wasn't me.
Yeah, many, many, many things. I mean, first of all...
You got new shoes.
I'm styling. So I would say many things, but for the sake of just focusing on a couple. One, you've taught me really the power of courage, because you really had a lot of courage to open up the way you did, and get to places that were very, very painful. You also taught me the power of trust, because you really had to bring this feeling like this could work, and you had to trust that we were going to go somewhere with the meditation, yes, and with the therapy that would actually be beneficial, even if in the beginning it was really painful and there were a lot of Kleenex going on there, and even if the meditation seemed really boring and you were out of your mind trying it, because you can imagine Chelsea expressing her disdain for this suggestion that I kept on giving you every time.
He's like, do you want me to make you a recording? I'm like, please don't. I'm like, I'm not going to listen to a recording. I wasn't open to that at all. And anytime I tried to meditate, I'm like, this is so silly. So it was a difficult ramp up for me to start.
So that really taught me. And the third thing I'll just say, and there are many other things, but your gift of thinking in ways that turn something serious into something funny is just so powerful. And when you were able to take, your skill as a writer, your skill as a comedian, as a person who could make serious things funny, and actually turn it inward and say, when you said, I think I'm going to write a book about this, and I said, okay, well, you're writing a book. And you said, no, I'm going to write a book about this, like the therapy. And then you asked permission to, because Chelsea talks about our sessions, and kind of makes fun of me a little bit.
Should we talk about that? Well, how did that make you feel when she made fun of you?
This is like reverse psychotherapy for me. So, but in terms of that, it made me feel really good that you could be so honest and funny about what we did, but also just that you could take the pain and turn it into the book, put it out in the world where you're totally exposed, and have the courage and the trust, and then this incredible ability to take these serious things. So many people will realize, they'll see my name, they'll love you, and they'll see my name like, oh, yeah, are you the guy who's Chelsea's therapist? And because you made it public, I could say, yeah. They go, that has been so inspiring for me to look inward so I can become free of stuff that's unresolved in me. And that, I think, is an incredible gift. So I've learned a lot about that.
Thank you. Consider doing a podcast together.
Hi, Chelsea.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I've admired you for a long time as a disruptor. And you were the first person that I saw who ever did ayahuasca. And I know that was pre all this work that you've done with Dan. And then you came back and you did the show on white privilege, again, disrupting, but maybe from a different place, maybe from a place of love. And I'm wondering, now, where's your heart now? Where are you going to show up next? And what change do you want to see made in the world, or what's up for you next?
I think for a long time, in my own experience, I was out for myself. I wanted my family, my friends, I wanted to take care of them, my circle of people. It was very this way, solipsistic in a sense. And I think what has changed is I wanted to make a bigger contribution. I wanted to understand what the collective meant, that we're all here together, that we're all here to help each other, that no one really is evil. They do evil things, people lose their way, but no one really is born to want to harm people. It's what we've all been through. But what I want to see more of is, for me, what's been so inspiring after Trump was elected was to see women coming together in the way that they haven't been for so many years. And that what showed up in that election, that 94% of white women voted for Donald Trump when, 100% of black women voted for Hillary Clinton, basically. And the fact that we're not showing up for these women, we should be doing what black women are doing. We should be voting for black people. We should be, And not just that, we should be taking into account all marginalized communities when you're in a position like I am and show up for something and stand up for something and stick your neck out, because it's necessary. And so the thing that has moved me so much and has been such a motivator for me in the last couple of years is seeing how women have shown up for each other, and that they're saying, yes, okay, we get it. We're sticking together. We don't vote for ourselves anymore. We vote for all of us. So we have one more from our presenter.
Okay.
Greetings, Janae Johnson.
One.
One. Too tall for all that. I had to come up here. The only way white women will do the quote-unquote right thing of standing in the fullness of their humanity is they won't do it until they face the fact of white supremacy and the trauma that continues to keep that alive. It is not enough to say, you should do this, without doing the work, sisters. You gotta do the work. You have got to do the work to unhinge all of that and clean that out so you can be a pristine vessel to do the right thing. It will not happen with a lovely conversation. So, Chelsea, you've been doing the work. Do the work, because you don't arrive there by a conversation. And it's courageous, and it's devoted, and it's a practice, and it's day by day, and you have to face the fragility that comes up and this lack of courage and these wimpy ass conversations, and understand that you will be held. I talked to this brother outside, young white man, and blah, blah, blah. So I said, He says, well, this will be good for everybody. No, stay on the spot, boo. It'll be good for you first. Be good to you first. And then when you're good to you first, then you can be good to everybody else. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Janae. Thank you. Dan, do you want to have closing thoughts?
You know, when you asked me to come to the Department of Public Health last year, yeah, we did work together for the city of San Francisco. And there's work to do in every area of our culture. You know, we just had a meeting in New York where we had First Nations people come from Canada, from Mexico, from the United States. We were talking deeply about how the ancient wisdom of us realizing how interconnected everything is something that has been lost in modern industrial culture. When you think about the 400 years since the first slave ship arrived on these shores, and there's never been a true reparation around what that was all about, right? That needs to change. When you think about that the worst genocide in the world was to native peoples here in North America, nothing's been done about that, right? So, you know, whatever we carry as a color of skin, the white skins that are up here, you know, there is deep work to do in the kind of deep conversations you're having that begin. And what I hope this conversation that we had up here today is a realization. And, you know, when you talk about the last, one of the last questions was, you know, Chelsea, when you did the documentary you did on white privilege, that came after we were working together, right? And when I think about the way, in ways you don't even make public sometimes, that you are contributing to all sorts of people all around the planet that are in desperate need, you know, we have this moment to say, well, if you're in a position of privilege, to do the work collectively. This is not on any one group or the other. So what I would just say in closing is, when we realize the deeply interconnected nature of who we are, that whatever body you happen to be born into, we have a wonderful opportunity, as challenging as these times are with racial injustice, with the climate crisis the way it is, with what Soren, Rhonda McGee, and I were going to do tomorrow, but it had to be canceled because of the coronavirus, was to talk about the inner work of planetary health, which includes all of humanity and all living beings on Earth. And so this work that we're talking about here on this stage right now is, okay, let's begin with the inner, do your individual work. And what you're carrying with you from this life of this body, know that there's ancestors that came before, know that there will be people and beings that come after, and that we're just a part of this unfolding experience. And when you take that on, you know, love is the way you can live. And that's a way of embracing the diversity of all living things on Earth.
That's beautiful. Thank you. All right. Do you have one last call?
Profound wisdom and presence. My name is Melody Hayes, and I'm a doctor and a psychedelic medicine physician who's opening a clinic in Berkeley. What I wanted to add to the conversation, which was really profound, and thank you so much for this moment, is that there's ways in which our Western cultural models privilege individual one-on-one therapy, and to bring it out of the context that it's not about healing one-on-one, but healing in groups. And the way in which our current cultural model actually, it creates disadvantage because not everyone can afford the one-on-one model. More than that, it separates us from the knowledge that the illness or disease is not in us, the individual, but in our community, in our isolation from community. And I just want to amplify, although therapy is great, community is better.
Thank you, Melody. Thank you, Melody. So I want to thank Chelsea and Dan for a riveting conversation and for all the work that you do and for
Yes,
showing
Dan,
up
you were
and
riveting. Thank you.
You were magnificent.
and for your
Soren,
connection and for your
excellent.
willingness to show up like this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.